investing rights, and the same sovereign wealth fund which owns Al Hilal, one of the teams competing at the Club World Cup, and Al Ittihad, who are expected to loan N'Golo Kante to Al Hilal, and which owns 16% of Saudi Aramco, Saudi Arabia's state-owned energy giant, both of which have become long-term FIFA sponsors or partners, with a further 81.48% owned directly by the government of Saudi Arabia. So all perfectly normal stuff then. The fact that neither Saudi Aramco nor Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund are public-facing companies, I mean, the latter is quite literally a state-owned asset management fund. They just invest in other companies and assets, and therefore neither have any conceivable motive to genuinely want to advertise their products to a mass audience, like, say, Coca-Cola or McDonald's, who are also FIFA partners tonight, shouldn't raise any suspicion at all. I mean, at least Qatar Airways, who are one of FIFA's 7 main partners, along with Saudi Aramco, are an actual airline, albeit a Qatari state-owned one, who would have a plausible reason to sponsor the World Cup beyond, well, you know, the actual reason. So everything about this tournament stinks, and I'm not just referring to New Jersey, which is perhaps why FIFA have taken it upon themselves to pay friend of the channel and the world's most prolific Mason Greenwood tweeter, Fabrizio Romano, to promote it for them. Romano, who has presumably given up on any pretense of being a journalist at this stage, as opposed to a PR mouthpiece, is being paid to promote the Club World Cup across his social media profiles, as per Martin Ziegler in The Times, a deal which seemingly included the major scoop of him being able to reveal what the badge that the tournament winners will be able to wear will look like. Truly, the Woodward and Bernstein breaking the Watergate seal of his day. What would we do without such fearless reporters holding the powerful to account? George Orwell is often quoted, probably wrongly, as having said, "Journalism is printing what someone else does not want printed. Everything else is public relations." Fabrizio Romano heard that quote and thought, "Great, I'll take public relations, please, Gianni. I accept Venmo." When Romano heard the similar quote, "News is something somebody doesn't want printed, all else is advertising," often attributed to the American newspaper publisher William Randolph Hearst, he thought, "That's an easy one, I'll go with advertising. Are Saudi Aramco going to pay me directly here, or I'll be going via Zurich instead? I will be needing the exclusive rates, of course, to share the Club World Cup winners badge as part of the deal. It's what the people want." Sorry, can I just apologise at this stage to the fine people of New Jersey for that earlier dig? I have never been, I've no idea whether it smells. I just felt like throwing an unexpected grenade in there. It is worth returning at this point to a theme from the start of the video. Football is incredibly unequal, both geographically and within National Football League pyramids, and I think most people view that as a problem when it comes to competition and their innate sense of fairness. The Club World Cup is sometimes presented and defended on the basis that it will rectify or be some kind of antidote to those imbalances, but the reality is the precise opposite. Within leagues and nations, the clubs who qualify for the Club World Cup, let alone those who go deep in the tournaments, will earn vast, highly distorting sums. At the most extreme level, New Zealand's Auckland City compete in the Amateur Northern League, where the more than $6 million that they are expected to receive for participating in the Club World Cup, in a league where the player wages are capped at £70 a week, is likely to be transformative and make them totally untouchable. Even in major footballing nations like Argentina, as Jonathan Wilson detailed in a recent article in The Guardian, Boca Juniors and River Plate, who are already the biggest and most dominant clubs in Argentina, will receive £11.25 million for competing at the Club World Cup, even if they lose every game. Platense, by contrast, the plucky underdogs who won the Apertura phase of this season's Argentine Primera Division received prize money of just £370,000, less than a 30th of what Boca and River are getting for being invited to the Club World Cup. It is inevitable that clubs outside of Europe, who receive such wildly distorting sums for competing in a month-long tournament, in most cases, more than any of their divisional and continental rivals making an entire season, are going to be at an enormous advantage moving forward, which, in turn, makes them much more likely to qualify for future Club World Cups, receiving that huge windfall yet again, and so the gap only grows ever wider. Even in the Premier League, the biggest and richest league in the world, where, for example, A £40 million windfall for Chelsea or Man City wouldn't guarantee them Premier League or Champions League success over the following season or seasons. It will still be incredibly significant. Liverpool and Arsenal fans may not care that their teams aren't involved in the Club World Cup, or even be relieved that their players will get some much-needed rest, and Chelsea and Man City supporters might not care or even be concerned that their team is, but that won't be the view of their respective owners and executive teams. The likes of Real Madrid and Man City, as the two highest-ranked UEFA clubs, according to FIFA's interpretation of UEFA coefficient rankings, will earn almost £30 million just for turning up, with Chelsea, ranked 7th in Europe, not far behind them. If Man City were to go all the way and win the Club World Cup, they could earn as much as $130 million, or more than £95 million. That isn't as utterly transformative to Man City as it would be to most clubs. They are already the second highest revenue generating club on the planet, behind Real Madrid, but it is still incredibly distorting in terms of the finances of the Premier League and UEFA competitions as a whole. In a Premier League context, it is almost as much as the lowest revenue generating club earns in prize money over an entire season. Man City could make that in a single month of glorified pre-season football in the United States. For a club like Newcastle, who are desperately attempting to increase their revenue so that they can rival the so-called Big Six in terms of spending, it means that Chelsea or Man City are practically guaranteed to make about £40 million through the Club World Cup, which is equivalent to about an eighth of Newcastle's annual revenue, and could make as much as £97 million, which is almost a third. The gap between Newcastle and Chelsea, and Newcastle and Man City, in terms of revenue, is already 466 and 174 million euros, with Chelsea and Man City being the lowest and highest revenue generating Big Six clubs. Thanks to the Club World Cup, however, that gap could increase to 550 and soon about 70 million euros, which, as in other countries, albeit to less of an extreme, will create a vicious cycle, making it much easier for the likes of Chelsea, Man City, and other Club World Cup teams to spend their way out of trouble, and much harder for the likes of Newcastle, Aston Villa, and Nottingham Forest to keep up with them. Just as there is a certain irony, as I referenced in a recent video, in the Saudi states who own Newcastle United, paying enormous sums for Big Six players like Kalidou Koulibaly, Riyad Mahrez and Fabinho, providing them with a huge boost in terms of spending power and navigating PSR, to the detriment of Newcastle themselves, the fact that the FIFA Club World Cup, which is effectively a Saudi creation, and without the Saudi state simply couldn't exist in anything like its current form, will, among other things, provide such a boost to Newcastle's newfound rivals, and make what is already a very difficult task in terms of competing with them even harder still, would appear initially counterintuitive. A cynic might suggest that it is almost as though the Saudi state doesn't really have Newcastle's best interests at heart, and they are just a single pawn within a much larger project. Not me, of course. I happen to believe that Mohammed bin Salman is a dyed-in-the-wool Geordie who grew up with Tino Asprilla and Nobby Solano posters on his bedroom wall, and only ordered the brutal assassination and dismemberment of Jamal Khashoggi because he found out that he was a Sunderland fan, but some cynics might think that. Beyond the distortive regional and national impact of the Club World Cup, it also won't do anything to address the global inequalities within the game. Quite the opposite, in fact. Club World Cup prize money, in terms of the upfront participatory fees, which account for over half, $525 million, of the overall $1 billion allocation, are tiered both by confederation, with European clubs receiving the most money, and Auckland City from Oceania the least, and within those confederations themselves, based upon coefficients. The reason for this is because if FIFA offered Man City or Real Madrid $6 million to participate in the tournament, as opposed to $40 million, like Auckland City, or $15 million, like Boca Juniors and River Plate, they would almost certainly have said no. The result, however, is obviously that FIFA's tiered payments only serve to reinforce the status quo and the current hierarchies that exist within world football, which, as I started this video by saying, many people have very legitimate grievances about. In almost every sense, then, whatever your perspective, unless you are Gianni Infantino, Fabrizio Romano, or a member of Saudi Arabia's ruling House of Saud, it is difficult to see not only how the Club World Cup will benefit football, but how it won't inflict yet more damage upon it, and make all of the existing issues that ordinary football fans have a whole lot worse. Speaking of ordinary football fans, we can't end without talking about ticket prices and ticket sales at the Club World Cup. FIFA is trialling so-called dynamic pricing of this tournament ahead of next year's World Cup because it is in the United States, land of the free, and home of fleecing people for every penny they've got. Dynamic is one way of describing FIFA's initial pricing for the FIFA Club World Cup. An absolute fucking rip-off would be another one, and indeed, a much more accurate one. The cheapest tickets for the opening game of the tournament between Inter Miami and Al Ahly were initially priced at $349, but following low sales, they were reduced to $230 in January, and on the eve of the tournament, with fears of thousands of empty seats tarnishing the tournament's image, FIFA slashed the price of those same tickets to $55. That is less than a sixth, or just 15.7% of the original price, and you could be forgiven for being a little bit irked if you had paid $349 for a ticket, when the person sitting next to you only paid $55. The danger for FIFA is that there won't be anyone sitting next to them, with reports that hundreds of thousands of tickets remain unsold. Domestic interest in soccer in the United States remains flaky, especially for such a new and unproven tournament format, which overlaps both with the CONCACAF Gold Cup, also hosted by the United States, and the NBA Finals. Foreign visitors, meanwhile, are reported to have been put off by a cocktail of disinterest, primarily on the part of the European clubs, initially sky-high ticket prices and travel costs, and fears surrounding their safety and security, as pictures and videos of ICE agents rounded up unsuspecting people are beamed across the world, and the Trump administration lays waste to any form of due process. Having initially denied that football fans will be impacted, it was recently revealed just days before the start of the tournament, as many people have long suspected, that, quote, suited and booted ICE and CBP officers, that is the US Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and Customs and Border Protection Departments, will be deployed, quote, for security at the opening game of the tournament between Inter Miami and Al Ahly at the Hard Rock Stadium in Miami Gardens, Florida, with non-US citizens advised to, again, quote, carry proof of legal status while attending the event, end quote. It's not exactly the most welcoming message that is being sent out to potential visitors. President Trump, meanwhile, just passed a sweeping travel ban preventing the citizens of 12 countries from entering the United States and heavily restricting the entry of those from a further 7. Some of the most passionate football fans in the United States when it comes to following the sport and attending matches are among Hispanic communities, with Latin American nationals, owing to both their close proximity to the US and passion for the Club World Cup, initially expected to account for a large percentage of ticket sales. Gianni Infantino, who has a very close relationship with Donald Trump, as he does with Vladimir Putin, is reported to have been frustrated by Trump's actions and rhetoric, which are perceived to have put off both domestic and foreign visitors from attending the tournament, owing to security concerns. That is potentially an issue not just at this Club World Cup, but, more seriously, for FIFA's flagship World Cup in just 12 months' time. The World Cup is such a flagship event for FIFA that they have attempted to sell bundles, including World Cup tickets, in an attempt to increase Club World Cup ticket sales. Things like one World Cup match if you buy 4 or 6 Club World Cup tickets, or, in a lot of cases, not even an actual World Cup ticket, but just the right to buy a ticket, sometimes conditional on a certain team being in it, or even not specifying which game, which date, which venue, or which teams will be involved. It is an offer which doesn't appear to have attracted many people, but FIFA will hope that that's due to the frail World Cup offering as part of the bundles, and not due to a depleted demand for a World Cup primarily hosted by the US in a year's time. All of this is quite sad, because if the Club World Cup weren't such a shameless Saudi-sponsored cash grab, being utilised as an opportunity to round up unsuspecting football fans and accuse them of being gang members because they have River Plate tattoos, it could be such a brilliant tournament with loads of fascinating narratives. You have got Real Madrid post-Ancelotti in their first tournament under Bayer Leverkusen double winner Xabi Alonso, and with new signings like Dean Huijsen and Trent Alexander-Arnold, the question of whether PSG can maintain their blistering form and performance levels that saw them thrash Inter Milan in the Champions League final whether a wounded Inter can recover from that humiliation and a new boss, Christian Chibu, whilst their former boss, Simone Inzaghi, takes charge of Al Hilal for the first time, flying the flag for Saudi Arabia's state-sponsored mega investments in football, where there will be huge pressure to impress. Group B, the so-called Group of Death, where America's first CONCACAF Champions League winners in over 20 years, Seattle Sounders, face PSG, Atletico Madrid and Botafogo, and Auckland City's amateurs being pitted up against three almighty beasts from the world of football, in the form of Bayern Munich, Benfica and Boca Juniors. But all of that is undermined, or at the very least significantly tarnished, by the sheer grubbiness of the whole thing. Whether you are personally invested in the Club World Cup or couldn't care less, this is a tournament born in sin and orchestrated by a group of people whose interest in football is purely transactional. You could argue that the same is now true of all major football and even sporting competitions, but the new Club World Cup benefits from none of the decades or centuries of goodwill and prestige developed by other competitions, like the actual World Cup, whilst representing everything that is wrong with modern football and the game's governing body to a greater extent than any competition which has preceded it. There is already talk of the Club World Cup being expanded to 48 teams. At some point, that will happen, and it will be held every 2 years. Players, managers, and supporters will complain about it, but that'll make no difference. This isn't the so-called invisible hand of the market dictating football's fate either. It is the very visible and very deliberate hand of world football's governing body, backed largely by the oil revenue of one of the world's most authoritarian theocracies, pulling the levers of power in a way that, even if you ignore the Club World Cup and don't watch a single game, you won't be able to ignore the consequences of it in terms of how it shapes the future of domestic club football and the actual World Cup. So no, it's not true that no one cares about the Club World Cup. In fact, everyone should care about the Club World Cup because it is the embodiment of a game utterly captured by some of the worst people in the world and a catalyst for some of the worst aspects of modern football being turbocharged rather than remotely rectified. Still, the new badge that the winners will get looks good, doesn't it? What do you mean you haven't seen it? It's all over Fabrizio's socials. Just scroll past all of the Mason Greenwood posts and the ones calling Papagianni his daddy, and you will be sure to find it. There it is. What a beauty. Actually, even that looks like shit, doesn't it? Anyway, that is it for today's video. Thank you all very much, as ever, for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. And, of course, it goes without saying, make sure that you are subscribed and have notifications turned on both for this channel, HRTC7s, and also my second channel, Alfie Potts Armour, both of which should be about to appear on your screens now, along with a couple of videos that you might enjoy watching after this one. You can also find me on various social media platforms, usually by the username @HRTC7s, and you can now support me additionally, should you wish to do so, either on the Alfie Potts Armour YouTube channel or via buymeacoffee.com/Alfie Potts Armour by becoming a member, leaving a super chat, or, whatever you fancy. But more important than any of that, I hope you all have a sensational day. I'll see you next time. Enjoy the Club World Cup. Cheers. The Championship is the best league in the world. Not my words, ladies and gentlemen, but the words of Neil Warnock, Chris Kamara, and whoever runs the HITC football channel these days. Or, as I personally prefer to call them, the three oracles of world football. The Championship is often described in England as being the hardest, most competitive, and most unpredictable league on the planet, all three of which are categorically untrue, aren't they? It's not the hardest league in the world, otherwise the teams who win promotion from it wouldn't get spanked every week in the Premier League the following season. It isn't the most competitive, you need only have followed the National League South promotion race this season to know that. And it isn't the most unpredictable, as almost every season now, at least 2 of the 3 promotion spots, if not all 3 of them, are occupied by relegated Premier League clubs, still in receipt of distorting parachute payments. Nonetheless, it is still utterly insane and sensational in equal measures. It is a league where almost every club is losing copious amounts of cash and spending far beyond their means in the desperate hope of going up and getting back to the Premier League. Almost everyone at some stage, no matter how delusional, fancies their chances of making the playoffs, and whatever happens, Bristol City will be their opponents. Profits would sooner miss a family member's funeral than a season for a Stardust football, which is why, after accidentally making the playoffs this season, they made sure to grow the semi-finals by losing 6-0. It's also a league which nurtures an incredible amount of talent. Jude Bellingham, Harry Kane, and Gavin Bale
no need.
Championship of becoming something of the world, as did Lucas Jokic. Yeah, apparently, not everyone can go on to make it at the highest level. But one of the best players in the league 7 years ago. It's funny you should ask me, because in May 2018, he missed the Melbourne's result, and before people started DMing I made a video on my help the 7 best players in the championship in the 2017-18 season, or, to put it another way, the 7 best players in the championship 7 years ago. My thumbnail game was absolutely good 7 years ago. I'm not sure where it all went. Okay, so today, if you would like to join me in this dance, I'm going to take a look at these players across all 5 players what I said about them at the time, and where those players are. Just to refresh your memory in terms of what happened in the championship this season, and what I sounded like at the time, this was the end of the championship season. Those are the ins and outs of the top and bottom of the division. But today, we're talking about players rather than here are our top 7 championship players of the season. That's right, a 30-second victory. But how tactical? It's here. We have who's never played the championship and was with the Las Vegas Lights 7 years ago. So obviously, this is a privilege. Get one of the best players in the championship 7 years ago. Today, and where those players are. So, junior players, and one of my mark is honestly, because I'm an up, I can remember Junior Hoyler's story about the world as in the 2012 season, as Blackburn Rovers were relegated from the Premier League. In fact, when you think that Blackburn team, starred Paul Robinson, Martin Olsen, Stephen Antonzi, Martin Gats Edison, Junior Hoyler playing onto the skin, and of course you who scored 18 goals in the Premier League this season, it is a wonder what they went down. This is going to Steve and it would spell to make sense. And then I'm trying to move back to the Premier League for 12 ages, but he suffered a second successive relegation in the Premier League. He followed former Keith Diablos and to Cardiff City in 2016, in the best league in the world, where he enjoyed his best ever season in the 2017-18 campaign. Here's what I had to say about Hoyler's impressive 2017-18 season 7 years ago. The new world's outstanding player it's been Junior Hoyler. The Canadian internationals made like this season, and the scored 9 goals in the championship this season. Really exceptional player with creativity, so well thrown forwards. Sean Slade, cheers 22-year-old LB. I'm not sure why I used to refer to myself as we, Mr. Bull. Presumably, I thought that I was royalty in 2018. This much point to the Premier League. As he scored 3 goals in the that put up a much better fight than most promoted teams these days, but was still ultimately relegated. Hoyler left Cardiff for Reading in 2021, followed by a brief stint in his native Canada playing for Vancouver Whitecaps in Major League Soccer, and a return to Britain with Aberdeen. Last summer, Hoyler joined Hibernian on a 1-year deal, where he just enjoyed a memorable season, scoring 4 goals and making 5 assists, as Hibs finished 3rd in the Scottish Premiership. Now aged 35, Hoyler's contract is about to expire, but Hibs are reportedly in talks to extend his deal for another season. 6. Tom Carey, Fulham. A graduate of the Hull City youth ranks, whose Tigers grew was curtailed by against Doncaster Rovers. It will be fair to say that Tom Kearney has bounced back pretty well from that setback. Fulham paid £3 million for Kearney 10 years ago, following 2 seasons of this, and it would also be fair to say that that turned out to be pretty good business for the Cottons. The 2017-18 season was Kearney's third season, and though it was his worst in terms of goal scoring, falling from 12 goals the previous season down to 5, it was his best in terms of his overall contribution. Here's what 2018 Alfie had to say about it. One of the 3 Championship Player of the Year contenders chosen by the DamMan, Tom Kearney is the best centre midfielders in the Championship. Last summer, a bid of £20 million from the Scottish International, and he has helped them finish the playoffs once again this time. As well as having 5 goals and 5 assists, Cottage's skipper also has the highest pass completion ratio in the division, with over 91% of his passes reaching their target. Riveting stuff. Fulham went on to win promotion via the playoffs as Kearney scored the only goal in a playoff final victory against Aston Villa. That began a run of 5 straight seasons in which Fulham, and by extension Kearney, were either promoted to or relegated from the Premier League. Half a decade of yo-yo was interrupted by Marco Silva, who has guided the Cottagers to 10th, 13th and 11th place finishes, with Kearney as his captain over the last 3 years. Now due a testimonial, following 10 years at the Cottage, Kearney tops Fulham's appearance charts during the Premier League era, having played 354 games at the club, and ranks 19th in the club's all-time list. Age 34, it seems likely that this season was Kearney's last at Fulham. Despite wanting to extend his stay beyond a decade, Kearney's current contract is about to expire, and a new one has not yet been presented to him. Meanwhile, Wrexham are reportedly willing to make him one of the highest paid players in the Championship, following their promotion from League One. 5th, Diogo Jota, Liverpool. I'm not sure how Diogo Jota managed to only be considered the 5th best player, by me, in a Championship season, but perhaps it is worth noting that he was only 20 when the season in question began. Part of a Wolves team that absolutely steamed to the Championship title, backed by a multi-billion-dollar Chinese conglomerate and George Mendes' contacts list, Jota was one of 7 Portuguese players snapped up by Wolves, along with a Portuguese manager in the form of Nuno Espirito Santo, who was brought in from Porto. Jota had also spent the previous season at Porto, under Santo, but he was actually contracted to Atletico Madrid, who signed him as a 19-year-old following his breakthrough with Paços de Ferreira. Jota never played a single minute of football for Atletico, as after his loan moves to Porto and Wolves, he joined the latter following their promotion to the Premier League for a reported fee of €14 million. That proved to be an absolute bargain. The top scorer at Molineux as Wolves won the Championship title, Jota scored 16 goals and made 7 assists over the next 2 seasons in the Premier League, playing either centrally or wide on the left, before joining Liverpool for a hefty reported £41 to £45 million, subject to add-ons. Jota has been one of the most prolific players in the Premier League in terms of shot conversion since arriving at Anfield, though his impact has been heavily restricted due to a series of niggling injuries and a couple of lengthy knee and calf setbacks. During his 5 seasons at Anfield, Jota has scored 65 goals and made 26 assists in 182 appearances, averaging a goal contribution once every 112 minutes. That's not that far off Mohamed Salah's record at Liverpool, 1 goal contribution every 91 minutes, and it is almost identical, 1 goal contribution every 109 minutes, to Cole Palmer's record at Chelsea. If he could stay fit for an entire Premier League season, with the same level of output that he has maintained for the last 5 years, Jota would average over 30 goal contributions a season. Nonetheless, he has struggled to do that, and, now aged 28, there is talk of both Newcastle and Wolves being interested in signing Jota this summer. 4. Ryan Sessegnon, Fulham. Tom Kearney and Ryan Sessegnon were teammates at Fulham 7 years ago, and they are still teammates at Fulham now, but whereas Kearney has been a mainstay at Craven Cottage throughout that time, Sessegnon has spent 5 out of the last 7 years contracted to Tottenham, and one of those years on loan in Germany with Hoffenheim. One of the most impressive English youngsters of his generation, Sessegnon was promoted to the Fulham first team at 15, he became a first-team stalwart at 16, and before turning 19, he had already played a quite incredible 120 games and scored 25 goals for the club. The 2017-18 season was Sessegnon's most impressive, both at the time and to this day in all honesty, and this is what I had to say about Sessegnon at the time. The second Fulham player in this seven, and Ryan Sessegnon was recently named by the EFL as the Championship Player of the Season. We don't quite agree with that, although we'd happily give Sessegnon the title of Most Impressive Season. Remarkably still only 17 years old, he led Fulham scoring charts with 15 goals as they came close to winning automatic promotion. A quick, tricky and composed left winger who is surely a future England international, you get the impression that Fulham need to win the playoffs to keep him at the club this summer. Well, Fulham did win the playoffs, Sessegnon did stick around for another season, but he hasn't yet been capped by England. Following his frankly astonishing championship season as a 17-year-old, Sessegnon was relatively nullified in Fulham's subsequent relegation campaign. Talk of a £100 million asking price subsided pretty swiftly in light of a season in which Sessegnon only scored 2 goals and made 6 assists, but having just turned 19, Fulham was still holding out for a fee of £40 million. They wouldn't get it, as Spurs snapped Sessegnon up for a reported £25 million plus Josh Onomar, who was transferred in the opposite direction. It proved to be a dreadful move. Neither Jose Mourinho, Nuno Espirito Santo or Antonio Conte had much time or thought for bloody youngsters, facing firefighting missions from the first minute that they arrived at Spurs, and in his debut campaign, having played a freakish amount of football for a player of his age at Fulham, Sessegnon made just 6 Premier League appearances. In 5 years at Tottenham, Sessegnon only made 57 appearances, and he played a grand total of 2,206 minutes of Premier League football, which is the equivalent of less than 5 full 90 minutes appearances a season. The 2023-24 season was especially bleak, as Sessegnon was forced to go under the knife to fix an ongoing hamstring injury, which, after being recurred, basically ruled him out for the entire season. Spurs released Sessegnon following that torrid campaign, leading to a return to Fulham after 5 years apart on a 2-year deal. Still aged only 25, Sessegnon managed to stay fit this season and rebuild his confidence. Having only played 5 minutes of football in the league by Christmas, he was subject to loan bids from championship clubs, but Marco Silva insisted that he remain part of his plans. And Sessegnon went on to play 972 minutes, 580 of them coming in the league, chipping in with 4 goals and 4 assists during that time, including one against Spurs. They're not the heights that many people expected of Sessegnon when he was having a practically generational season for someone of his age in the Championship, but there are green shoots of recovery and plenty of causes for optimism heading into next season. Third, James Chester, retired. The best defender in the Championship 7 years ago, at least according to this bozo, was Aston Villa's James Chester. One of the cleanest dispossessors of an opponent that I've seen at any level, Chester is another player, the third in a row you could argue in this 7. His career was majorly impacted by injuries. Outstanding for 4.5 years at Hull City, Chester's career stalled at West Brom, not through any fault of his own, but because he is only 5'11", making him about a foot too short to play at centre-back under Tony Pulis. West Brom still sold Chester for a profit to neighbouring Aston Villa, in a deal worth a reported £9 million, after Chester was part of the Wales team, who reached the semi-finals of Euro 2016. Superlative in successive seasons at Villa Park, in his third season with the club, Chester played through a knee injury for 3 months, as Dean Smith's side fought desperately to win promotion. They were ultimately successful in promotion, beating Derby County 2-1 in the playoff final, but it came at a huge cost to Chester. It was discovered in November that the cartilage in his knee was deteriorating, and that any further stresses and strains would only make the problem worse. With Villa struggling with an injury crisis extensively though, Chester effectively sacrificed himself, and his knee, for the good of the team. When the January transfer window arrived, Villa signed Tyrone Mings and Chester was finally out of the best, but the damage sustained during the time ruled him out for the next 11 months. When he returned, his athleticism had been shot to pieces, and random muscular injuries became a recurring theme. Chester still put in some excellent performances over 2 seasons at Stoke in the Championship and at Club in the League too, But in his efforts, he was correct. And kicking the cat down the road for the last 2 or 3 years. Edwards. Chester,
That's a
who
field
was a
look right there.
graduate of the Manchester
Looks like
United
it's
Conference, joined Salford City at the start of the season, but he retired in February, age 26, after increasing responsibilities to appearances.
Okay. I think I have the replays up. Oh yeah, I do. I think I have the replays up. I ain't gonna lie. This James, you're coming out, bro. Oh no, Brewster, where's Brewster? Not the Levi and Ozone. That's a Jackson. There we go. I got soda. I saved the last two series.
Dragons reached the round of 16, where they lost 6-2 against the team James Madison hadn't spent long in the season, but it was able to go. Here's what I said about James. So surprising. Even the best representing team in
Oh, wow. Oh, Joggers.
But not yet scored more than 3 goals in a season. Madison appears to be a combination in a sneaky mediocre currently under Daniel Clark. He scored 15 goals and made 11 assists in competitions, and in the league alone, he only scored 46% of all of Norwich's goals. That caught the eye of Leicester City, who had a Riyad Mahrez-sized hole to try and fill, a mask that would have been impossible for almost anyone. Madison came
Oh, what's that? Oh, look at you. Oh my God. Thank you.
Page 28, Madison has been capped 7 times by England, but he has 8 mountains and he is currently one of the top 10. It is a convicted domestic abuser. I'm just kidding.
Oh. Yeah. Somebody pass. Pass. Still. Oh no. Oh no. Oh my god. Oh no. Go Chelsea. Cuckoo! What the? No.
He had become the youngest captain in the entire history of the league, and he was already a full Portuguese international. Here's how I summed up Neves' season in the Championship 7 years ago. There was never any doubt that he was going to top this season. Even people who pay little to no attention to the Championship will have seen fantastic highlights for outside footage, offering the Neves smashing ball to Dyansty. He has scored 6 goal of the season contests this season. In truth, that is just one tiny part of his overall game. Capable of playing in holding or central midfield, Neves has an exceptional range of passing and an understanding of the game that is well beyond his limited years. Of course, he did cost Wolves almost £16 million, and that kind of money you'd expect to stand out player in the Championship. If he has another good season in the next year, you could double or maybe treble that valuation, no problem.
Come on, Chelsea.
At least, there's no doubt Neves is going to be an outstanding player in the Constitution this season. Neves did indeed have another good season.
Oh, Tony. Oh, yeah, get in. Come on. Get fresh legs. Oh, go. He's fucking cool. No. Offside. You're lying.
Along with the likes of Al-Ali, Al-Ittihad, and so I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that last one right. They've also reported
You're lying, bro.
He has been promoted in his first 2 seasons. Yet again to just look back at the Championship's finest from 7 years ago. Neves just scored the winning penalty for Portugal against Spain in the final of the UEFA Nations League, and he is about to make his Club World Cup debut against Real Madrid. Those were my 7 best Championship players.
Oh, Messi.
As well. Neves will change the history. They were once trio that the Cody Willie Holly Plus. Someone like England's brother, who has since retired, having ended his career in Saudi Arabia with Al-Ali in 2022. Villa loanee Robert Snodgrass, who has in season retired.
Cross.
Following considered a £100 million winning flop at Man City. Derby's Curtis Davies, who retired in 2024. Then Rams teammate Mate Vidra, who now plays for Victoria Plinsenia. Bristol City forward Bobby Reid, who now plays for Leicester City. Hull City's Jared Bowen, now a star man at West Ham and one of the Hammers' all-time greats. And Cardiff City centre-back duo Sean Morrison and Sol Bamba. Morrison is 34 years old and has been without a club since leaving Rotherham United over a year ago. Meanwhile, Bamba tragically died almost a year ago, aged 39, having previously overcome non-Hodgkin lymphoma after collapsing in training while managing Adana Spor in Turkey. And that is how you end a light-hearted Where Are They Now video on a surprisingly morbid note. R.I.P. Sol, he did genuinely seem like a lovely bloke. That is it for today's video, but thank you very much.
Come on, Messi.
Make sure that you are
Come on, Messi.
subscribed.
Messi. I can do ball first. Oh yeah, Anderson. Anderson, let's fucking go. Yeah, best play this year. Let's go. Let's go. One more stop. One more stop. Jokers. Oh my god. Jokers. Come on, Gunner. The loans. The loanees. Oh my god. Oh my god. Jokerson. If you can make one more stop.
The richest club in Italian football.
He's the one, the reason we're even in this place. He's going right. He's going right. I think I put four. I think I put Enzo. I'm gonna get it. I put Gibbons. End it, Gibbons. End it. End it. End it. End it. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Let's fucking go. Let's fucking go. Oh my god. Let's go. Oh my god. Oh my god.
Which is the largest conglomerate in
Oh my god, that was crazy.
The 90th and 94th richest people in the world, each with estimated net worth in excess of $20 billion. Their combined net worth of well over $40 billion is greater than the Red Bull Airmark Mikeshits, any Italian, and indeed the owners of any other Serie A club. Juventus, Inter Milan, and AC Milan have the second, third, and fourth richest owners in Italian football, but since 2019, Como have had the richest. In a Premier League context, Como's owners are richer than Tottenham, Liverpool, and Manchester United's co-owners combined. On the day of recording this video alone, Booty and DamMan's estimated net worth rose by an estimated $663 million.
Wait, semi-finals? Oh no, I forgot. We're going into. Oh my god, we're chilling. We're chilling. Cfb Dyansty. I don't know about City, but oh my god.
The club was seeking promotion from Serie D,
We're
the
chilling.
semi-professional fourth tier of Italian football. Como didn't have a training ground, their beautiful old stadium was crumbling, and they hadn't tasted top-flight football since being declared bankrupt and forcibly rebounded in the fourth tier in 2005. 12 years later, Como were declared bankrupt and managed to Serie D again. Now they are one of Europe's most upwardly mobile and ambitious clubs. They just finished about Torino and Udinese in their first season back in the top flight, 6 years on from playing semi-professional football, and now they have the Milan Giants, Juventus, Napoli, and Atalanta all firmly in their sights. Manager and co-owner Cesc Fabregas reportedly rejected advances from both Bayer Leverkusen and Inter Milan in recent months, with a rapidly growing reputation as a manager within the game, and it seems likely that he is going to be backed by one of the biggest war chests in Italian football this summer. Despite denying that their multi-billionaire owners would turn Como into especially high spenders, only Roma had a higher net spend than them last season, and only just, ahead of the likes of Juve, AC Milan and Napoli, and already this summer, Como haven't bailed 3 new signings who cost them a further €30 million. In the January transfer window, Como reportedly had a €40 million bid for Teo Hernandez rejected by AC Milan, who only finished 2 places above them in the Serie A table. So who are Como 1907? Why did Indonesia's largest conglomerate buy a struggling lower league Italian football team? And should Italy's, and indeed Europe's leagues, be looking over their shoulders with serious concern? Well, funnily enough, and it is mad how this keeps on happening, that's what today's video is all about. So sit back, relax, and join me on a journey.
You gotta be kidding me.
No, I'm really spoiling it this time. I've either cheated or I'm about to propose. As we take a look at a football club with enormous ambition, very deep pockets, and a project which is rife with contradiction, confusion, and just general strangeness. The largest commune on the famous lake of the same name, the city of Como serves as a gateway to Lake Como and the surrounding area. Mentioned by the Roman poet Catullus over 2,000 years ago, Como has a population of about 85,000 people, which is roughly the same as Grimsby in Lincolnshire, but it attracts significantly more visitors. Not so much a playground for the rich and famous as a luxury retreat and resort, the city has become synonymous with Hollywood A-listers like George Clooney and Sylvester Stallone, as well as billionaires like Richard Branson and Arkady Novikov. It's even a popular destination among footballers. Wayne Rooney, Ronaldinho and Lionel Messi have all holidayed in Como, as did Cesc Fabregas, before becoming a player, co-owner and manager of the local club. In that order, Chris Smalling got married in 2017. Meanwhile, Ollie Watkins and Morgan Gibbs-White both chose it as the picturesque backdrop to propose to their partners. Como can count Taylor Swift, Brad Pitt, Mick Jagger, Madonna, and even Thugger among its recent visitors. Gianni Versace had a villa here, and Bond's Casino Royale was filmed here. Como isn't your typical destination, frequented by the rich and famous though. Unlike Saint-Tropez, St. Barths or Mykonos, the weather in Como is temperamental, the skies are often a dark shade of grey, and the city receives over twice as much annual rainfall as London. The primary attractions are the stunning mountain scenery, fantastic restaurants, and the knowledge that there will be no tourists without an offshore bank account within a 50-kilometre radius of you. Como attracts so many tourists for a city of 85,000 people, an estimated 1.5 million annually to the city, and almost 5 million to the province, that they are considering imposing a tourist tax to try and deter the less affluent among them. Seaplanes transporting Como's wealthy guests get a good look inside the Stadio Giuseppe Sinaglia, Como 1907's home since 1928, which was built on the orders of Italy's fascist dictator Benito Mussolini. 17 years later, Mussolini was captured by communist partisans in the nearby village of Gongo before being shot, spat at, and hung upside down from the roof of a service station in Milan. Good times. The Stadio Giuseppe Sinaglia sits on the shores of Lake Como, next door to the city fields and clubs, the latter of which is the oldest seaplane flying school in the world. Seaplanes take off and land behind the stadium's Curva Como, home of the club's ultras, and are visible during games. Despite occupying such a scenic location, that is the closest that most visitors to Como typically came to the Stadio Giuseppe Sinaglia or to watching a game. Even Cesc Fabregas admits to knowing little about Como's football scene as a tourist to the area before becoming directly involved with the club. Fabregas and Henry were approached to invest in Como by Darren Dean, son of David Dean, the former Arsenal co-owner and vice-chairman who played a key role in the Premier League's breakaway from the Football League in 1992. Darren Dean is a football agent and intermediary whose clients include both Fabregas and Henry. When Fabregas was looking for a way out of Monaco 3 years ago, it was Dean who put then Como president Dennis Wise in touch with his World Cup winning clients. Fabregas only played 17 games for Como as they finished 13th in Serie B retiring, but he has since become an integral part of the club's project off the pitch. Their Como were in the semi-professional Serie D when the billionaire Hartano brothers and their jar of work. They are by far totally utterly Como competed in the Prima Categoria, which was the reversal to Serie D, for the first time in the 1913-14 season, which was earlier than the likes of Roma and Lazio. But they had further stints in the top place, so they were to the 1949 study 13 season content.
Slow tackle. Take it slow. Oh, Messi! Oh my god, off the post. Off the post. No way that way. Stop, stay focused. Stop, stay focused.
with Como's forward promotion to Serie C in the same season when the deal was completed. The job group paid €850,000.
They can't do nothing. They can't do nothing on it. It's like we're chilling. We're chilling.
Como's club president, Urban Sabasso, is sometimes described as the leading figure behind the Barcelona Sabasso since their return. Having spent 2 years as an economist at the start of the ceremony, Sabasso spent over 10 years working in the entertainment industry, both as a producer on films and commercials, but most notably as the business development director at Super Soccer TV, a football television channel in Indonesia. He was poached by Mola, an Indonesian streaming service launched in 2019, which holds the Indonesian rights to the likes of UFC, Premiership Rugby, and several European and South American football leagues either in Indonesia, Italy, or multiple countries across the globe. Mola is a subsidiary of Polytron, which is itself a subsidiary of Jarum, which is, of course, owned by the Hartano brothers. Sabasso has been Como's president since Jarum acquired the club in 2019, and Mola's CEO since 2022, though he describes his job titles as being Chief Delusion Officer at Mola and Chief Cheerleader of Como on LinkedIn, because that's just the kind of wacky Indonesian David Brent that this dude is. Sabasso has previously written about how the problem for streaming services is a lack of customer loyalty and a high degree of churn, something which he feels can be rectified through the rights to sports, which tend to have stickier audiences than other forms of entertainment. Sabasso is very much the ideas, commerce, and business operations man at Como, with little involvement in sporting matters. And that is probably a good thing, seeing as though he has recently compared Jarum's project at Como to Disney, comparing the football club to Disneyland within that analogy, describing it as being, quote, the partner making of the most important parts of the business, and stating, given the club innovation Como state rights, football has to be second. Football are not innovators. The Barcelona brothers are the aggressive, and in Como's dealing breakdowns. Sabasso says he speaks to the end. That is slightly unusual in Indonesia, one of the most passionate and football-obsessed countries in the world, where club loyalties and allegiances have often bled over into hooliganism and violence, with the country's Liga 1, which was previously sponsored by Jarum, often described as being the deadliest and most violent league in world football. Aged 84 and 85, the Hartono brothers might not be personally invested in football, but they certainly have financial interest. Before buying Jarum launched Britain's soccer school development program and the academy team called Canada Select, which takes some of the most talented young players from Indonesia, brings them over to the United Kingdom, and puts them up against English academies and development teams. Based at Loughborough University in Leicestershire, Canada Select have faced the likes of Arsenal, Man City, and even Inter Milan on a tour of Italy. Canada Select are managed by Des Walker, who played in both the Premier League and Serie A and won 50 games for England, and their technical director is Alan and Chelsea legend Dennis Suarez. Youth development is a serious problem in Indonesia, and its mismanagement and corruption, which is one of the reasons why, despite being the biggest club in the world,
Stay back, bro. Go to the final. Go to the final.
Several former Canada Select players have played in Indonesian top flights. Meanwhile, the academy's brightest lights, like Ray Batari, Hockey Karaka, and Anando Ali, are all full Indonesian internationals now, all aged between 20 and 24. There is a secondary aim, however, which is where Sabasso comes in, and that is content. Canada Select's journey is charted both on YouTube, where the team has over 60 million subscribers, and videos with up to 46 million views, and, more notably, on Mola TV, where they are the subject of a 6-season docuseries titled Dream Chasers following their progress, of the kind that have become so common in recent years. I watched a couple of them in the name of research for this video, and I can confirm that it is mostly just Dennis Wise bollocking a bunch of very confused-looking Indonesian kids. 10 out of 10, would recommend. There's also a movie about them called Garena Selects the Movie. Good name, but I must concede, I haven't watched that. That isn't the only football movie, documentary, or docuseries that Mola TV's in-house studio, Mola Studios, has produced. There are 2 more series of Dream Chasers, following the Borussia Dortmund and Inter Milan academies. There is one about the history of Inter Milan, called Inter 110, one about the life and times of Sampdoria legend Fabio Quagliarella, which I really need to get around to watching, and one about Joey Barton's time at Fleetwood Town, titled The Contract, a 6-part behind-the-scenes documentary which charted Barton's quest for redemption with the League One club between 2018 and 2021. I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but it doesn't end with him winning the Champions League. It also won't surprise you to know that there is not 1, not 2, but 3 docuseries charting the progress of Como on Mola TV. There are 2 series of Como 1907, which covers the club's takeover and promotions. There is Sex, Como 1907, which is a, quote, captivating documentary which follows the remarkable journey of football legend Cesc Fabregas as he transitions from player to coach at Como, and, who could forget, Como Waves, Revolution on the Lake, which is described as being a, quote, gripping docuseries which follows the ambitious and groundbreaking story of Como 1907's women's team as they aim to become the first and only team in Italy to climb from the amateur 5th division to Serie A, mirroring the men's remarkable success. End quotes. There is also an entire movie, of course there is, called Como 1907, The Real Story. Presumably all of the documentaries were the fake story. What a waste of 18 hours of my life then. Still, if I hadn't been watching that, I suppose I would only have been watching Dean Saunders Soccer SOS with my new Mola TV subscription, a series in which, quote, football legend Dean Saunders travels across the world to find Sunday League teams that could do with some experienced help to turn their fortunes around. From Fat Man leagues to prison teams, Dean spends a week with them to help get the best out of them. End quotes. I'm not sure that I've ever heard an idea for a television series that sounded more like Alan Partridge speaking into his dictaphone. I don't know how successful that series was, but the Instagram account dedicated to it only has 5 followers, and 2 of them are a man called Dean Wheatley. So, really, that's 4 followers, isn't it? And one of those is a boxing gym, and another one was a Como Mola and Jarum employee. So, well, that's 2 actual people who weren't employees. That one didn't get a second series.
We haven't met last night, your chat show. Has he given you another series?
No, he won't give me one.
Give him another series, just one.
Presumably Monkey Tennis is already in production. Mola Studios sits within the umbrella of another Jarum subsidiary, named Cent Entertainment, which is headquartered in London and has an office in Como, and it is clear that Savasso, and by extension the Hartano brothers, view all of these businesses as being highly integrated. Savasso has even openly admitted that, initially at least, the primary reason why Jarum bought Como was to produce a television show. Speaking to Calcio e Finanza earlier this year, when asked why Jarum bought Como, Savasso responded, quote, "We were looking for a project for a television program. At the time, I was managing a TV station in Indonesia, and we wanted to create a show that would be a sort of football documentary." End quote. In that sense, it is hard not to draw parallels between Como and Wrexham. Wrexham have climbed from the National League to the Championship under their Hollywood ownership duo, powered and, in large part, financed by the success of a documentary series titled Welcome to Wrexham. Como has so far gone one better than Wrexham, reaching the top flight of Italian football, though the barrier to entry in Serie A is significantly lower than it is in the Premier League. That's not to diminish Como's achievements or the job that the new owners have done. When they arrived, Como were in the midst of an ultimately successful promotion race from a semi-professional form tier. The team didn't have a training ground to sessions, booked a couple of weeks at a time. Now the club have their own purpose-built training ground in nearby Mazate, which they are rapidly looking to upgrade and expand, seeking to emulate the academy success of Atalanta every 30 miles away in Bergamo, who have produced the likes of Cfb Dyansty, Deo Kulisevsky, and Alessandro Bastoni in recent years. Those three only made 10 Serie A appearances for Atalanta between them, but they were sold his one goal this season made him only the fifth player in the entire history of the team to score a goal in the same goal in all games. In that same article, Dio Kulisevsky says Fabregas was like, the idea that Como would go after big name signings, like his former Barcelona teammate who was reportedly had been since 2014. It's not like the throwing money everywhere. Key to emphasise the importance of the club not spending your money and building gradually, following recent boom and bust stages resulting in bankruptcies in 2005 and 2017. The risks that protests, general experience of the league players at Como, like Dennis Wise, who was brought in as a technical consultant and promoted to CEO in 2021, and Jack Roberts, who was appointed as head of
Yes, sir. Messi.
The Euros in 2016, where they reached the semi-finals, recording a famous victory against Belgium's golden generation in the quarters. Roberts also served as Como's caretaker boss during the second half of last season, as Cesc Fabregas wasn't allowed to manage the team for more than a month, owing to the fact that he hadn't yet obtained the necessary coaching badges. Following promotion, Fabregas returned to the hot seat, and Roberts turned his attention to development full-time. Nonetheless, Como's an Italian player. Como native and Italian international Patrick Catrone, who joined Wolves from AC Milan for £16 million in 2014, dropped out to join Como in Serie B in 2022, followed by fellow former Italian international Simone Verde, who joined Napoli in 2018 and 2019 for a combined €45 million in the summer of 2023, who made the same unexpected drop down into Serie A. Which is already running competitive with Serie B squads to more than €30 million in 2024, putting it the lowest spending Serie A clubs. It was following promotion to Serie A, however, that Como's co-owners and managers' promises must be small progress spending across the summer of
Don't do this to me. Let's go. I'm not getting Yes. Oh my god. Oh my god. Let's go. Let's go.
Brought in from Hertha Berlin, who has been a rocket centre-back, Senegalese teenager Assane Diao, who was an absolute revelation following his mid-season arrival from Real Betis, scoring 8 goals in only 15 games, and, most notably of all, 20-year-old Nico Paz, who was brought in for €6 million from Real Madrid and made the Serie A Team of the Year in his debut campaign at Como, as well as being named as the best young player in the league. Mervan Sabasa has claimed that Paz isn't for sale, but that hasn't stopped Bayer Leverkusen from approaching them, prompting Real Madrid to consider activating a reported €8 million buyback clause in his contract. Como had the second highest net spend in Serie A as a new promoted club, above Juventus, AC Milan and Napoli, and only
Even though we got real striker up front no more.
It would be a surprise when the club's accounts are published for this season if their wage bill has doubled, taking it above the likes of Udinese and Hellas Verona's, if not even Bologna's. The job that Cesc Fabregas has done has been impressive, hence the reported interest from Bayer Leverkusen and Inter Milan, as well as those around. But this is far from a fairy tale rise from the fourth to the first tier, brought about by pluck and determination alone. Monza enjoyed a very similar rise from Serie D to Serie A in 5 years after the Berlusconi family club, bringing in several big names and managing to finish 11th in their first season following promotion, despite spending less than Como. Although, admittedly, Monza were relegated in last place following an abysmal showing this season. We haven't yet touched upon the people actually writing these big checks at Como, namely Budi and Bambang Hatala. The sons of Oiwi Guan, a Chinese-born businessman who moved to Indonesia in 1920,